Welcome to Jim Harold Live. I am Jim Harold and so glad to be with you once again. And may I say, whether you're tuning in live or you're watching the replay, welcome to the show this week. And we've got a great show this week. Let's see what all is up. First of all, we've got our question of the week. We've got our paranormal stories. We've got Ouija boards with Karen A. Dahlman, and a campfire story and your feedback and thoughts. It's so good to be with you once again. And we see a lot of people, a lot of spooktators there in the studio. So we appreciate, thank you for joining along. So let's get started, if we will, with the question of the day. And here's the question of the day. And we thought would be appropriate with Karen A. Dahlman, one of the foremost experts and practitioners of the art of the Ouija board and spirit boards, to ask you this question. What do you think of the Ouija board? And, you can comment throughout, but at the end, we will ask you your opinion. And of course, we're doing some Q&A with Karen, so that'll be a lot of fun. I know there are a lot of viewpoints out there about it, and I have my own thoughts, which I've shared with Karen on her own show, and we can talk about that today too. But I want to know what you think about the Ouija board. Are you all in? Are you all out? Or are you somewhere in the middle? You tell me. So I thought we'd do some fun paranormal news, and there were a couple of stories in particular that caught my eye. I got to say, it's kind of tough to do this sometimes because a lot of it's like so-and-so ghost hunter saw a ghost, like the Daily Mirror kind of things and stuff like that. So I'm trying to look for more unique material and things that are different. And this one caught my eye, actually caught Dar's eye. She's the one that told me about it. This was on entertainmentweekly.com, EW.com, excuse me. It was on Popular Mechanics. It was on Yahoo. And it's about this gentleman here, Gerald Johnson. And he is a Texas pastor who is active on TikTok. And he says that back in 2016, he took a journey to hell. Yes, a journey to hell. He said his spirit left his body and traveled to the center of the earth. That's where he says hell is. And he got a full tour of hell. And he couldn't figure out why he was there. He thought he did a lot of good works in his life. And the message that he says he got back from God was that he had done good works, but he was not forgiving enough to people who had wronged him. So what was really interesting about this, I thought he saw a demon walking a person around, a man burned from head to toe, walking him around. And then the demon would sing different popular songs to him, like Don't Worry, Be Happy, or Umbrella. The Reverend said, and this is a quote, every lyric to every song is to torment you as to the fact you didn't worship God through music when you were here on earth. You had a chance to worship him in church and at home and through music, but you chose to worship Satan by repeating the lyrics that he inspired to come into earth. And I think his kind of thought on it is that popular music, a lot of it's inspired by Satan. That's his right to think that. But yeah, he said he went to hell, and a very interesting guy. I saw the video embedded on one of the websites out there. I'm not a TikTok person, but I thought it was really interesting. Do you think there's really a hell? I don't know. Hillary says, I can't help but laugh at that story. Let's see. Has this pastor even heard Black Sabbath or Judas Priest backwards? Torture with Rihanna's Umbrella sounds about right. I don't know. I like that song. I think it's kind of catchy. Let's see. Maddie said, it took me like a minute to realize that Umbrella was a song and not literally an umbrella. I have to admit, I'm a little disappointed. So this is a good point. Sandy says, maybe that pastor was stuck in Walmart during Christmas. Yeah, so anyway, that's that story. I thought that was interesting because, there's different thoughts on hell. Is there a hell? If there is a hell, I hope it's really reserved for the really bad people. You know what I'm saying? Like the Hitlers and those kind of people. I'd hate to know that you got to hell on a technicality, So anyway, Suzanne said, if it was a song that never ends, it would make more sense. There you go. Still more tolerable than being tortured to Black Eyed Peas, says we have fun. Well, there you have it. There you have it. So on to hell, from down below to up above, UFOs. Jeremy Corbell, he's been on the shows and he's so popular these days. Well, he says that he has gotten photos of a possible UFO caught on camera flying over the Iraqi city of Mosul in 2016. And he recently talked about it on his new podcast with George Knapp. It's called Weaponized. And Corbell said about this image that you're seeing, it's a military filmed image, an intelligence agency filmed image, and it's called the Mosul Orb, Corbell said, noting that the object was named after the Iraqi city where it was spotted. And you can see it there. This is from the New York Post, nypost.com. And you see it there circled. And if that's a legit image, that is remarkable. Now, let me put this question forward to you. Since it was in Iraq and it was found in 2016, could have been American military. Just a thought. And because one part of the military doesn't know what's going on in the other part, you could be in the military and there could be a secret project or a secret craft or something like that, and you wouldn't necessarily know about it automatically by being in the military. So just a thought. Corbell went on to say in this article, New York Post again, check out the original article. We'll put a link in the show notes. This is in the UFO category within our intelligence community. This is an example of one of the UFOs that our military and intelligence community is looking at. It's just one of many images. And apparently, the Department of Defense was asked for comment on it, and they did not share any comment, which I don't find surprising at all. If it were as legit as the day is long, I wouldn't necessarily think that they were going to reply on that. But that's a you show it one more time here. That's a pretty remarkable image, that kind of metallic image there. Very interesting indeed. And you can also check out Jeremy's socials at Jeremy Corbell. So what are your thoughts on that? Do you think there's something to that? Do you think it's military? What do you think? Ginger says, could be a secret drone. Suzanne says, Corbell and Knapp's podcast is so very interesting. Jeremy's been on the shows. I've asked George Knapp, and he was apparently too busy. So I noticed he wasn't too busy to be on Joe Rogan, though, but that's okay. Hey, that's fair. Renee says, aliens are watching us. Rover Wright said, technology at its finest. So there you have it. And again, I think there's something going on in our skies. I think there's a range of explanations. As I've said on the shows, I think there's hoaxes. I think there's good people who are mistaken. By the way, I should have closed this curtain over here. There's like sun pouring in, so I apologize if it's ruining the shot. But there's only so much you can do with this. But I think there's hoaxes. I think there's good people who are just mistaken in what they see. I think some of it's military. Then I think there's that other category that falls into what I think is the most interesting, is things that are not of human origin. At least we don't know they're of human origin. And what is that? Is it alien? Is it interdimensional? What is it? So, all it takes is one for it to be real. So I think there's definitely something there. I think that I've been doing some reading lately, and there's a thought that there's different factions in the U.S. government. Faction A wants to get the word out and start being more transparent about these things. And you could look to Congress. I think it's Gillibrand and Rubio are two examples, one on each side of the aisle, who are for, getting the information out there, getting to the bottom of this. And then I think there are other parts of the government that definitely want to say, oh, well, these are drones, these are military, these are maybe foreign actors, which, as much as I think countries like China, and to a lesser extent Russia, especially now with the Ukraine war, that I think that they're capable of high-tech things. I don't think they're leaps and bounds ahead of the United States. I don't believe that. Now, it could be just wishful thinking on my part, but I think that it might be foreign actors. I think that's largely a cop out. I think if it's military technology, it's more likely than not to be U.S. Military technology. Although the Chinese have done a lot of work on things like hypersonic weapons and those kind of things. So, not saying they couldn't leapfrog us, but just saying that I think that the U.S. might be underplaying what it has in its arsenal. Renee says, and I agree, government knows more than they reveal. And to some extent, I understand that. I mean, I think there is a need for things like national security. I think that's a real thing. But a lot of times, I think that things are put under the umbrella of national security. Perfect example. 1963, the Kennedy assassination. There are still documents the government hasn't put out from 1963, and they put it under the item of national security. My goodness, this will be the 60th anniversary. I don't buy it for a minute. They're hiding something. Anyway, Jake does say this, with the dollars we spend, it's hard to see anyone being way ahead of the U.S. I agree. So, and Weekly Creep says the grassy knoll. Don't get me started on JFK, because that's a whole, I could talk for hours about that. But we're going to talk about something far more fun and many would say more interesting today, because we have a very special guest with us. And let me pull up her website here so you can take a look at it. I'm talking about the one and only Karen A. Dahlman, and we're so glad to have her with us. And she really has just such a great background. She's practiced as a licensed and board certified art physiotherapist, professional counselor, hypnotherapist, and she writes about ways to personally transform your greatest self. But she has been working with the Ouija board since 1973, and she's here to join us to talk about her work with the Ouija board. Karen, how are you today?
Doing great, Jim. Thanks for having me.
Well, your background, you just everything looks great, and thank you so much for joining us. And thank you for having me on your show. We recorded that the other day, and boy, that was a ton of fun, and I really had a great time doing that. So thank you so much for that.
Yeah, that was a blast. You were great. So that'll be coming out later, and you guys can catch Jim on the flip side of him being interviewed.
Yes, and I got to say, you just you bring out such great points, and I don't have it with me today, but Karen looked. Dar has a Ouija board from when she was a kid, and she was able to date it down to like the year, I think we came up with late 70s, because you knew the difference in the planchette, and the piece of plastic was right there as opposed to a piece of brass. It was just really amazing to me how you were able to do that. Just amazing.
Yeah, and the corners of your board too, that gave it away as well. So there's always things you can look at. I'm a collector. I'm part of the Talking Board Historical Society. I'm a director and an officer there, and we take our collecting and collections seriously, and the history as well.
Well, yeah. I mean, you obviously take us seriously. Look behind you at those beautiful boards. I know that's just a small sample of what you have. But let's go back to the beginning. Let's go back to 1973. And how did this all start for you?
Yeah, I kind of knew what a Ouija board was, but I was like, that's kind of stupid. But my friends down the street said, hey, you want to play a game with us? And we always played a lot of different kind of games. Candyland, Operation, Pickup Sticks, Barrel of Monkeys, things like that. And they pulled out the Ouija board from underneath their bed. And the weirdest thing about it is it starts moving around. And I'm thinking, well, that's dumb. You guys are pushing it. They said, no, we're not pushing it. Let us show you how it works. Now, I already believed in spirits and ghosts. I had a so-called imaginary friend, which wasn't imaginary at all. I found that out a lot later. But I was already seeing things people didn't see, and I didn't tell those girls that. But when I tried the board, I was mesmerized with it, because not just because it moved and it worked, and I believe they weren't pushing it, but because they had a sister who was deceased. And one of the girls in the room, her twin, died shortly after birth, and they were now in communication with the sister. And the amazing thing to me was the sister was no longer, 3 months, 4 months old when it died. It was actually 10, like the other girl in the room.
Oh
And so
my.
she was growing up on the other side. And that's, I got to tell you, Jim, that's really what fascinated me the most. And that's why I really wanted a Ouija board right after that experience.
And then it just carried along throughout your childhood, or was it something that you played with a little bit and you put it up and then picked it up a few years later? How did all that go?
I used it all the time. I used it every year. I used it all the time. Now, did I get great responses? Not always with my friends. They didn't have the patience for the most part to sit there that the board requires. As you guys know, any of you who try this tool, it does require a lot of patience and practice. And they didn't necessarily have that. They wanted instant gratification. But I used it all the time. One of my younger brothers was good at using it and still is to this day. And then I had friends along the ways that really wanted to use it and explore. And what I found is when I got into high school, college, those years, people were really more excited and had the ability to sit there and wait for the messages to come. And once you start doing that, you'll be rewarded with a lot of flowing messages. It's just getting over that hump of the patience it requires. So yeah, I used it throughout. Every year I used it. Sometimes I use it every week. Other times it might be a month or two in between. But for the most part, when I got older, especially when I got in graduate school and beyond, I was using it a lot to really perfect my skills and abilities with this tool.
So really, I mean, from the get-go, you didn't really consider it a toy. You considered it basically a channel to the other world.
Yeah, it was never a toy to me. I loved it so much. The Ouija board is not behind me right now. The one I had originally, it's up higher. You guys, I have shelves going out both ways of boards. I have like about 85 boards, which is small considering a lot of collectors have hundreds. All right. But anyway, it was always serious to me because I believe that the afterlife is that's all I was talking to in those days was the afterlife. I knew that was real. And I just knew it because of the experiences I had, what I could see. And so I thought it needs to be done respectfully. And I always was respectful about it. That was just something that was given to me. It wasn't like I was trained to do that. I just did this in a vacuum and realized it was important to do that. And I found that when I did that and asked my friends to not be frivolous with it, we got better results. So I kind of learned early on to, be patient, but also see the reverence and the sacredness in doing this tool. I do want to say this. The tool is not what does the work, okay? This is just an inanimate object. What does the work is myself, any of us who are using the tool. I call you guys the operator or the user. We're the ones that do this work. It's channeling. That's all this is another form of channeling.
So what exactly do you think that by using the Ouija board, what are we tapping into?
Well, this is what I believe happens. When you do any form of channeling, what you get is going to be run through the filters of your own personality, of your own mind, of how you view and see the world. So if you're very fearful of working with other energies that you can't see in the unseen dimensions, you're going to get more fear-based information messages coming through. If you feel like, and these are extreme examples, if you feel really positive and excited about exploring the unseen dimensions, you're going to get more of that kind of information channeling through. What I do believe is happening, it's a combination. I do believe you can speak with those who are transitioned in the afterlife. I do believe you can speak to various energies that are in different dimensions, which would include the afterlife, what we call the afterlife. It's so much more complicated than that, at least from my explorations of it. I believe we can talk to our higher self, our inner self, our greater self. I teach that a lot these days and how to make that contact, because once you make that contact, you could be inspired within your own life and receive information that'll help you along your way. I believe you can communicate with other beings and maybe other planets and other universes. The list goes on and on. If you don't limit yourself, the abilities to make these communications happen will be far, far reaching.
So let me ask you this then. Okay, you can contact a wide range of entities using the board.
Yeah.
Is it possible, and I think this is some people's concern, is it possible to tap into negative energies or entities? And is that overblown, or is that a genuine concern?
Well, this is what you need to be concerned about, not the board and not using the Ouija board. Be concerned about yourself. If you see the world in a fearful way, which is a lot of people do. I mean, you see yourself as a pawn to the world, then you're going to attract those kind of energies. I mean, there's all different levels of energies out there. I mean, there's the whole spectrum is there. But if you are feeling more positive about exploring and discovering, and those are the filters in which you see the world, like through the curiosity lens of curiosity, you're going to bring that energy to you, whatever energies are out there that have that energy. Now, I've developed some techniques over the years for myself that work for me, where I can pretty much it's like dialing a knob on some kind of like an old-fashioned radio like you have behind you, Jim, and you turn it and you turn into this frequency. And how do I do that? I do it through my intentions. And again, I'm very positive about this tool, so I always dial that up. Now, if you're negative, sure, you're gonna attract negative things to you. And I got to say this: this works like life. When you go about your day and you have a chip on your shoulder or you're negative, you're going to tend to have more negative experiences with people. You're going to see that or bring it out because you're expecting that. So I see Ouija very much as like a parallel to how we just live our lives. If you're more positive and upbeat about things, that's the energy that's going to come through. That's what you're going to bring to yourself.
Now, here's a good question. Rhonda wants to know, how do you know who or what is responding? Because I think that is a concern, this idea of imposters, like saying, I'm your Granny Melba, and it turns out to be, I'm really Satan. I mean, I think that's kind of a fear that people have. How do you know you're not dealing with an imposter spirit, or what you're actually tapping into?
Well, thanks for asking that question, Rhonda. It's a great question. It is probably one of the top questions that is asked. All right. So the way you work with channeling, and I'm talking like you do verbal channeling, automatic writing, you might be an artist, you just get information, you download it dreaming, have ideas. That's all a form of channeling. And so how do you feel? That's the question I would ask you. When you're doing this work and you're getting a message, how does it make you feel? This is a very new way of learning to use our body as a form of measurement, as the barometer, as the tool. You are the tool. You're the one that's opening to these energies. And how does it leave you feeling? And so if you're talking to somebody, you go, I don't think that's my grandmother, then trust that. It probably isn't. But if you go, wow, that feels like her, I'm feeling touched emotionally by it, then go with it. But what I tell people always as a safeguard, when you first start using this tool, never trust the accuracy of the messages at first. I mean, it takes years. Jim, I didn't even come out into the public with this information until 2012. Just a little over 11 years ago is when I came out. And I really wanted to make sure what I was talking about and writing about and doing all this research all those 40 years before, that I at least had a good grasp on it, and I had used it in real time with a lot of different people and been able to experiment with how to get good energies and how to raise your vibrations to do this work. So I think that's really important. Is really learning to discern what you feel when you use this tool, and that's going to tell you who is there. I know it sounds nebulous, but when you start working in the unseen dimensions, you begin to use your sixth senses. You must start activating your clairsenses, which brings up a whole new level of tools. We are the technology. Jim and I talked about this the other day on my show. We are the technology to make these tools work.
Now I've heard of the Zozo phenomenon. We did a show one time about that with the late great Rosemary Ellen Guiley. It seems like she keeps coming up in conversation.
She does.
We have fun, whom I think you know those guys. Ever have an encounter with Zozo? What do you think that phenomenon is?
Well, Rosemary and I, we're really good friends. We talk a lot about this, and we use the board together. She'd come to my sessions often, and we spent time talking about this phenomenon. And she asked me some questions, and I believe it ended up in some of her work she did later on. But it was about, I believe that Zozo phenomenon is no different than any other kind of sensation that comes around. And so we start creating this energy around it. So like the Slender Man, Hat Man, all these things that start popping up, and they're there for a time and they're gone. I believe it's in our collective unconscious. It's more of a archetype, if you will. I follow Carl Jung. I'm trained in Jungian psychology as a therapist, and I go back to that. That's even the concept of the higher self. I believe it's an archetype we tap into, and we happen in this day and time to call it Zozo. Is it real? Well, it's energetic. It's energies. Does it have to be real? No. But if you want to constellate that certain type of archetype within your life, you can. So, and when we start giving a lot of energy as a group of beings, like of humanity, or let's say social internet excitement about Zozo, we kind of start going under this group hypnosis. This old psychological talk coming out now, guys. We go into this kind of group hypnosis where we start believing it. Even if you believe it, you can make things real. And your body and your mind doesn't know the difference between faking it till you make it, what's real and what's not. It's what you tell yourself. And so you can have these experiences that show up with this type of energy. But do you have to? The answer is absolutely not.
And what you're talking about, it sounds a lot like tulpas, the idea of a thought
Yeah.
form.
Correct.
And
Tulpas
yeah,
a more modern way, or tulpas were
yeah.
back from the Middle East, where they would talk about their thought forms. And Carl Jung looked at some of those things as well, but he named them archetypes. But it is like an archetypal energy, and it's like the 100th monkey syndrome. When enough people are believing and doing something, it changes the rest of humanity. So it's like that law of critical mass. And so if enough of us believe it, then it starts to become a reality for those people. Doesn't mean that you have to have that experience, but if you do, there's ways to shift that and change it.
And by the way, I just want to say one thing. When I look over to the side, folks, I'm not reading the sports scores or the stocks. I'm actually looking at your comments. So, so when I do that, you know what I'm up to. And
actually, I'm looking at it over here too. I'm trying to see a few comments. But
Sylvia had a great one. She said, "Oh wow, I didn't realize we could contact our higher selves through Ouija fasting." And I don't even know that. Maybe I'm sure that over the years in our discussions that has come up, but I didn't. It's not top of mind. So let me ask you that. I mean, we just did a show with Anthony Peake, the researcher, a few months ago, and he wrote a book called Chasing the Ferryman. And his belief about life is that when we hear that little voice in the back of our head, that's actually our higher self. His whole theory is that we reincarnate, and our higher self is like our coach, and we're playing like the video game. Interesting concept. I don't know but he had this concept of the higher self, the Eidolon, he called it. So let me ask you about that. How do we tap into our higher self, and what can that do for us with the Ouija board?
Yeah. Great topic. And I got to tell you, this topic I'm teaching in Sedona, the Sedona Ascension Retreat coming up in March 16th to the 19th. I'll be there. And I'm teaching all about the higher self and how to use the Ouija board to tap into your higher self. So it was in 1989, for 4 years, a group of friends and myself decided we wanted to exclusively tap into that. Although we had some errant, deceased people coming through. And by the way, they're not deceased. They're just transitioned. They're actually still alive in spirit form. So they would come through. But we purposely wanted to talk to our higher selves. And so it is like what your friend says. It's that part of you talking to the part of yourself that's still connected to the divine. It is that part that knows. It's that part that's always with you, stays with you through all incarnations forever. And when you actually leave this body suit and you transition back to spirit, your higher self is there. And it is the voice within your mind, but there's another voice in there. And the other voice in there, we'll just call it doubt. You may call it psychological terms, the ego, but there's a voice in there that we tend to doubt ourselves. And once we can get beyond that doubt and tap into the higher self, you start becoming super inspired. Now, it's not that life becomes so much easier. It's just that now you have a tool to use to navigate life that is a lot more even keel, a lot more. It has the ability to see things from a greater picture, greater perspective. So it's very helpful to tap into your higher self. In fact, I'm teaching that, like I said earlier, more and more on the board, because I think that's not so scary for people to tap into your bigger part of you, your greater self, your inner self. Because I think people start thinking about spirits, it kind of gets spooky, where the higher self you can always count on once you learn to hear that voice. Now, having said that, you can also learn to tap into your higher self off the board. For me, the board is such an easy tool for me to use. I've had success with it. It's 50 years now. I've been using the board 50 years this year. Huge milestone for me. But I can do the work with the higher self off the board. I teach both ways at my workshops.
Robbie, you're right, has this question. Do you have to light an even amount of candles? I never heard of the even amount, but even amount of candles to ward off evil spirits, or say a prayer and tell it goodbye afterward to be safe? And I guess the bigger question is, are there certain procedures that you follow or rituals when you go in and when you go out of a session?
That's a great topic to always talk about because I think we all have our own unique ways or rituals of doing this type of work. We were working in the unseen dimensions, whether it's doing a paranormal investigation, whether it's actually doing trance mediumship or automatic writing, or doing tarot cards or I Ching or the ruins, or even dowsing. We use some certain techniques and tools and tips to get into the realm where we feel ready to do this work. And so, what I always tell people is, bring to the table when you do the Ouija board, whatever else you're using. If you enjoy having the candles and you love doing a ritual with maybe burning sage or using Palo Santos oil, or there's many different things. Some people like to use tea lights or big candles, or crystals. I mean, you bring to it what works for you. Now, I don't so much anymore, but I will. So sometimes I go, oh, I'm feeling really like I want a little extra, like amethyst, or I want a little extra crystals. And so, like, here's my crystal ball back here. I will bring those tools to the table. I always do like a ritual of a breathing exercise, which helps me ground and raise my vibration into the love vibration. And then I also do an incantation, kind of like a prayer. And I always say goodbye at the end because it's just polite. Like, I'm not going to hang up and go, out of here. I'm going to say, bye, you guys. So good seeing you, you know? And so you just bring your etiquette, your decorum, and whatever works for you to this tool. You don't have to make it all spooky, weird. But if you want to, you can, because that's the beauty of this. We all have our different various ways of getting prepared to do any kind of work with the unseen dimensions.
Now, there's some people who may use this almost in just like, oh, let's talk to a dead person. But then there's people who really say, hey, I want to reach out to someone, maybe someone or someone's very specific. Is there any recommended way to approach using the board in that way to make a serious attempt to get information and communication from your loved ones who have passed?
Yeah, and so, it really requires your intentions. It really requires your focus and the belief. Belief is so important here, you guys, because our belief will stop us from doing a lot of things. That's where self-doubt comes in. But if you stick with your belief, and your belief says, it's possible that I may be able to reach my grandmother, or my cousin who just transitioned. It may be possible. I'm open to it. So you at least got to have that there. And then you, through your intentions of, maybe people like to do photographs or have an object of theirs, or just envision them in their mind, and then start working the board from that space. However, just because we want to talk to somebody doesn't mean they're willing or able to even come through at that point. To come through and do this work, even on the other dimensions, it's almost okay. Here's interesting. So I do still talk to Rosemary Ellen Guiley. She, like I said, we were really good friends, and she still comes through on the board and off the board. Now, the thing when she comes to the board at this point, because she's actually been transitioned for over 3 years, almost going on 4 years this summer, she will say, it's almost like now I'm stuttering or I'm having to slow down to get you the information, because this tool, as you watch somebody use it, even I move it pretty fast when Rodney and I are using it, it still is slow considering getting direct downloads of information as you might when you just do a direct channeling, which I do as well. You get, it's quicker. So you have to remember that too. And I've had people who reach out to me, friends that say, my husband's mother just transitioned. Could you reach her? And she came through and said, I really want to work with him directly. And so whether he's at the board with me, which might work, or she just wants people to come to him in dreams or in another format. So I just got to respect what everybody wants to do. It doesn't matter if you're in spirit or not. There's still a level of respect for that. And just because I say, oh, I want to talk to that person, doesn't mean they will always come through. But still, I've had quite a bit of success with my friends who have actually said to me, and this may sound macabre, but they've said to me, we have these packs that say, whoever goes first, come back and let's talk on the board, because they loved using the board with me. And I've had several of those experiences.
Just a quick note, Nicola, and I think Joy also mentioned this. Will you be able to rewatch this? Yes. And I put that little scroll down at the bottom. The best way to make sure you can rewatch this and any of the lives that we do, youtube.com/Jim Harold. And you can subscribe to my YouTube channel. I know some of you watch on Facebook. We're keeping it up there for now, just as a way to reach as many people as possible and serve you in the best way we can. But really, the best way is not Facebook. Sorry, Facebook. The best way is YouTube. Go to youtube.com/Jim Harold. Subscribe. It's free to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you're always informed when we're about to go live or we post a video. That's the best way to take care of it. You can see this great presentation by Karen and all the other things that we do. Karen, what do you think the biggest myth about the Ouija board is? What do people get wrong about it? I'm sure there are many things, but what are the biggest ones?
I think the number one myth is this, that the board has some kind of spell or energy in it, or that it actually is how this channeling works. The board does it all. So as soon as somebody sees a board, and you can see I have different kinds of talking boards behind me, and including Ouija boards, that they think, oh, you got that in the house. Obviously, that is a portal to some kind of negativity. Biggest myth out there. You guys, again, 55 years I've been using this with inspiring, exciting breakthroughs and information. It's helped my life and helped me even be a better person in the world. It's not the board. It's just learning to channel with this tool. That's a myth. The board does nothing, you guys. It does nothing. And I don't care what anybody says, oh, I got this in the house and all of a sudden your house is haunted. That's bogus. If it's haunted, it's because of you. You're the one that's bringing the energies in. It's you on the board. It has nothing to do with the board at all.
And to your prior point there about it's helped you in your life. So this isn't just something if you want to communicate with the dead. This is something if you're facing a personal situation, a job situation, whatever it might be. I guess you could ask the board for advice potentially.
Well, you would ask your spirit guides, or you would ask your higher self. You're not asking the board anything. And that falls back into the board does it all. So what people say, well, ask your board. I go, no, I'm going to ask my guides. Now I use the board, as Clyde Lewis calls it, the theatrics. The board's my theatrics. Isn't that great? Just like Clyde, to display what I'm actually channeling, because that's just the tool for channeling. The planchette moves around, hits the letter, spells it out. I can do this automatic writing. I can do direct channeling. You see, I'm just using that. That's what I learned. I thought it was only to speak with the deceased, and I was so excited about that. Then I started learning in 1989 higher self, angels, spirit guides, ethereal beings, extraterrestrials, etc., etc., etc. And I've got a book coming out, you guys, this year. I've been talking about it for a while. It's a lot of work to it. It's coming out the end of this year. Oh, excuse me, end of the summer. And it's all about how to do this and all these different beings I've contacted over the years, along with their messages. And it's going to be a lot of information in there about consciousness.
Excellent. And I hope that we can have you as a guest on the Paranormal Podcast when that comes out, so we can talk about it and get everybody to pick up on it. Cindy made this point. She made a Ouija board once using wood and a wood burner. She loves it and she still has it. And I guess that brings up kind of a point about the boards themselves. You don't need one certain brand or one certain special board or anything. It's just a tool. So can you talk about that? What's important about an individual board, or if it really has no importance at all specific to that board?
Well, for me, it has no importance at all. Although I do like I like this board back here a lot. This big one, I use this all the time on my show. I like the one I got from Santa Claus. I like all my boards, and I use them all, you guys. I make boards and I have people make boards and send them to me, and I use them all. So I love the fact that she made her own board and wood burned it. You guys, when you make your own board or your own tools and it's special to you, that actually helps with the resonance, helps with your frequency and vibration, because you enjoy it. You put that love into it. You know what I mean? So it actually makes you happy. You probably look at it and go, oh my God, I made this. This is so cool. I have so many really cool boards. Here's one right here. A friend of mine made, she's an artist. It's called the Luna board. It's a giant moon in there, and it has a really cool planchette, which is actually a Luna moth, because they found up dead in her yard. She didn't kill anything, and then she decided to put it in resin. So the planchette is a Luna moth. I love this board because it's so unique. It came from a friend, and therefore when I see it, I smile. And that right there raises the vibration, makes that much easier to make contact. So I say this, you guys. Make your own board, as our person in the audience just said. Here's a cute little one of my friends made me. It's a little resin board. Isn't that adorable?
Ooh.
Little boards work too, you guys, as long as you work. Has a little.
Wow, that's cool. That's neat.
So these will work too. I use my iPad. I use my iPad. I've used Many things, you guys, they can all work. I would say start on something a regular size so you get used to the movement, and then eventually you can use one finger. So start bigger and make your own, make it special, put your own symbols on it. That just helps kind of solidify, concretize the energy, your energy going into it.
Now, Rob, you write, and maybe you already showed it to us. What is the fanciest board you have? You don't need to show it to us, but
I
what
can't.
is
It's in the other room. It's on display right now in one of my rooms back there. I have this, well, gosh, let me just say this. I do have a lot of really cool boards, okay? But one of the boards I really like, it's a glass board that was etched underneath, and it has all these different symbols and characters of different beings that I've spoken to. They symbolize the different beings I've spoken to throughout my life. And I call it the All That Is, Universal All That Is board. It's probably this good size glass planchette. It is fantastic. I have shown it before. If you want to see it, go to my YouTube channel and you'll see me using it along with my board partner Rodney. It is a cool board. Love it.
Very cool. And since we're mentioning that, I'm going to take down my banner while you mention yours. But what is your YouTube channel? Where can we find that?
You can look under Creative Visions TV, or just Karen A. Dahlman. Put the A in there. Karen A. Dahlman on YouTube. Pop right up. I think I have 220 plus videos. I don't know. A lot. You'll see there'll be links to other interviews I've done. You'll see a lot of my own shows. It's always what's coming up for me next, and who I'm talking to. And like Jim said, he was on my show. He'll be posted probably in a few weeks. But be sure to join, subscribe there so you can see when I start dropping these videos. I got some great guests this year. I always have good guests, but I got even greater ones for this year.
Well, since it came up, I wanted to make sure we mentioned it there. And we'll mention one more time. If you have a few more minutes, we'll go a few more minutes. You've been very generous with your time. What is the rarest Ouija board? I got to assume, like, if you collect stamps, you collect coins, you collect whatever, there's like that stamp. I remember the one stamp that was like worth a ton of money. I think it's the Wright brothers playing upside down or something.
Oh.
I mean, there's got to be something in the Ouija world that's like the, the one that everybody wants, and maybe you have one of them. What is that?
Well, there's a few, and I don't have them, but I know my fellow collector friends do. One is the original prototype board. There was just a few out there, and it was the board that Miss Helen Peters had used. And that one is in the collection of Robert Murch, who many of you know.
Oh, yeah. You've spoken to Murch before.
Yeah, you have. And a lot of people in here know him, too. He's great. He's actually the president or the board, what'd you call him? The main director at the Talking Board Historical Society. Chairman of the board. Da-da-da. Okay. Now there's another board. It's a metal board, a metallic board that has lights on it. And when the planchette goes over it, it lights up. And that was from the 40s, 30s, 40s. This board had to be recalled for the war effort. They had to take scrap metal and put it back into our armory. So there's only a few of those out there. Gene Orlando has one. I've shown it on my YouTube show. Go check that out. And you'll see also the Helen Peters board in my YouTube channel. There's another one that none of us have found yet. And if you guys do, let us know. It's called the Witch board, like WITCH board. It was a board that was given to President Grover Cleveland. We think we know what it looks like, but we're not sure. So be looking for the Witch board. It would have came out in 1886.
That is pretty cool. And then I guess the last thing I'll ask, since you're mentioning history, I'd always heard that there's some question about the word Ouija. Where did it come from? It almost sprang out of nowhere, but then I had heard some apocryphal stuff. What do we know about the word Ouija and actually the invention of the Ouija? Because I know we think of William Fuld, but really, what was the genesis, as far as you can tell, of what is the modern Ouija board, the modern spirit board?
Boy, I could talk about this for another half an hour, but I'll try to be brief, you guys. He asked a lot in that one question. It may not seem like it, but there's almost 3 versions now to Ouija, and I'll go through that. And just to say, the board, I'll just say this: the board came out of the spiritualist movement in the mid 1880s. So about 1886, we saw it appear in the world, or in the United States, I should say. But the word Ouija board is the patented trademark name, and that came out in 1890 by this group of inventors, men and one woman named Miss Helen Peters. So here we go. People think Ouija means yes, yes, French, German, right? We all thought that for years. Okay, you're not wrong if you thought that, but that's really not the truth. The truth is this: It came because they were doing a session with Elijah Bond, Miss Helen Peters, and a few other people in the room. Elijah Bond was the guy who patented. He was the patent attorney for the name Ouija and for the board. Miss Helen Peters was his sister-in-law, and she's one of the founders of the board. A lot of people didn't even know about her. And that was that original board I told you about that Robert Murch has in his collection. All right, so they were sitting at the board, and they had their fingers on the indicator and said, "What should we call you?" And it spelled out Ouija. They're like, "What does that mean?" It spelled out good luck. So Miss Helen Peters at that moment had this locket on her neck, and she opened it up, and inside the locket was a picture of a woman and what we believe were the letters Ouija, or could it have been Ouida? Now, Ouida was a feminist writer at the turn of the 19th century, which would have made sense. This woman, Miss Helen Peters, was ahead of her time with these men inventing boards. She might have had a locket with a picture of a woman who would have been Oita, that was her pseudonym, her pen name. Then later, fast forward now to more recently, a couple of the members of the Talking Board Historical Society uncovered this information. Miss Helen Peters married a gentleman named Nosworthy. Nosworthy's mother followed Cora Hatch, who was one of the most popular, best. I mean, you read about Cora Hatch, you guys. She had several different names because she was married, I think, about 5 times, but who's counting? She was one of the most famous spiritualists at the turn of the century. And it would make sense, too, that maybe in her lock was a picture of her, but her spirit guide's name was Ouina, Owina.
Huh.
So we're not clear. We need to find that locket. You guys have the locket. Let us know. But so there's stories there. It definitely does not mean yes board. That was the truth about how it was founded that day. And we know this because it's written in periodicals and articles. We find the facts and bring them forward and bring it to the public to let you know. So when we get the information, we keep bringing it forward for you guys.
So there you have it. If you ever wanted to know the origins of the Ouija board, you got it from the expert herself, Karen A. Dahlman.
And I do want to say one thing. It did not come out of ancient China or Greece. People say that. There's no proof to that. There were always divination tools and oracles that people consulted, but a Ouija board or a talking board is consisted of a movement device, like a planchette indicator, and then a board with the letters on it. Anything else in the sand or in the dirt, that's not a Ouija board or a talking board or a spirit board.
Sky-eyed 42, and she he or she later corrected to O, but my great aunt's name was Wida. Because that's she said, sorry.
Yeah.
Isn't that cool?
And Wida. Okay, yeah, you could say Oita Wida. You're absolutely correct. See, look at that. That's a name from the past. So that could have been a picture of that woman who was that feminist writer. Look that up, you guys. It's pretty cool information. Thank you for sharing that. That's exciting.
Well, it's been exciting to talk to you today. I mean, you have such great information. You have your website, creativevisionspublications.com. But what else and where else would you direct us so we can plug into everybody? Please mention that YouTube channel again and your show and everything you do. Where would you direct people and where to look for that book coming up too?
Absolutely. So you guys join my newsletter at my website. You can either go to KarenADahlman.com or creativevisionspublications.com. If you look me up on social media, I'm always under Karen A. Dahlman. Same with YouTube. But the book should be coming out end of August. But I also told Jim, I haven't fully announced it a little bit when I interviewed Jim. I do have another book coming out this spring, and it's more of a children's adult book. It's really for the young at heart. And it's a book that my cat wrote. Yes, it's true. You can communicate with animals. You can channel animals. People do it all day long off the board. You can do it on and off the board too. More about that. But listen, join my YouTube channel. You'll learn about that book and also my website and know what's coming up. I've got events where I speak at in public. Sedona's in March. I've got Michigan Paracon in August. I'll be there where I share all this information and even teach you how to use the board. Listen, it's been great being with you guys. A great audience, Jim, and thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much, Karen. You're the best, and always a privilege to speak with you. And I look forward to continuing the conversation. Thanks again.
Great. Bye-bye, you guys.
Bye, Karen. She is fantastic, isn't she? Karen A. Dahlman. check out all of her stuff, her website, her YouTube channel, get on that email newsletter list, and look for those upcoming books. And speaking of upcoming, I'm going to take a short operational pause here and show you something, and then we will get the campfire story of the week. Actually, Karen inspired this. Last week, I was on her show, or the other day, I was on her show, and she said, "Tell me about that great coloring book that you have." And it's like, to be honest with you, we did this a few years ago. I've almost forgotten about it. And it's something I need to share with more. And it's certainly a way that you can help support this live stream and help support the shows is by buying our True Ghost Story adult coloring book. I actually looked over on Amazon today, and in the US, it's a little under $10. I'm like, dang, that's too cheap. So it's the True Ghost Story adult coloring book. Basically, it was my idea, but it was really put together in terms of the illustrations by a very talented man, Len Peralta. And quite frankly, I can't draw a stick man, as I've said many times. I'll just show you a couple of frames from it. Let's see, let me find one. We were talking about the Ouija board. You might remember the old story, Lucifer and the Lamp. I think we read that story not too long ago. That's one of the pictures right there of the coloring book. And again, it's at, I'll bring this up again, Amazon.com or JimHaroldBooks.com. I have the links there. Let me find another one. We had one about a young lady terrorized by the image of a flamenco dancer. And it was from a lamp that she had on her bedside table. And here's a picture of that. Look at that artwork. Isn't that just tremendous? I mean, I think that's just great. And honestly, it's one of those things that I've not really promoted nearly enough. Yes, adult, but not in that way. In other words, it's not necessarily for kids. It might scare them. Rob, you right, says tempting. Yes. And then I'll show you, let me show you one more, and then we'll get on to the campfire story. Let's see here. I'm looking through here to find one that I'm particularly fond of. I can't remember which story this was, but he's kind of creepy. That guy's kind of creepy right there. So lots of coloring fun to be had. So please do check it out. I would appreciate it. It does help the shows. You know, none of this stuff is cheap. The equipment to do this live stream, the editing equipment, the sound equipment, we don't go cheap on anything. Dar will tell you that. But to make things as best they can be, it takes money. So we would appreciate it if you could help and help the cause by buying one of these books, JimHaroldBooks.com, and I think you'll enjoy it too. Let's see if we have any comments. Cindy says, looks like my kind of coloring book. You put a link up. You put up a link. Well, I put it there, but we'll put it in the show notes too after we are done. So, and Karen did say, by the way, thank you everyone for joining. Have a great day and weekend. And we thank Karen once again. So now it is time, speaking of books, to do our campfire reading of the day from True Ghost Stories. And right now we're doing Volume 1, True Ghost Stories, Jim Harold's Campfire, Volume 1. And I was reminded of this because we just did a new campfire, and it was called The Haunted Bed. And someone on social media made the comment, and forgive me, I don't remember who this was, but they said, you know, to the best of my recollection, I've listened to every campfire show, and you've only had one other story about a haunted bed. And I think that might be right. So this is called Uncle Ted's Bed. And this is from Megan, Arizona. And this probably dates back to 2010, 2011. This haunted bed has been in our family for a few generations. It was my great Uncle Ted's when he was a child, and unfortunately, he died under tragic circumstances. I think it was in the 40s. It was at my great-grandmother's house until she was too old to really take care of the house, and then it was passed down to my parents and became a guest bed. About 5 years ago when I was visiting, they assigned me to sleep in it. So I went to bed as usual, And that night I had a really wild dream that I was driving on the highway in Buffalo, where we lived on the Skyway, a highway bridge that follows the beachfront of Lake Erie. I was looking out the window of the passenger side in my dream, and my mother was driving. It was really windy up there. I was looking out the window and I kept seeing ghost faces touching their faces against the window and tapping on it. I was really freaked out by this dream, and I remember waking up and the bed was shaking as if it was your car on this kind of bridge highway, shaking because it's up so high in the wind, as happens when you're on a high altitude bridge and it's windy. There was tapping as if the ghost faces were tapping on the passenger side window in my dream. Then I'd woken up, but the bed was still shaking. And there was still tapping. I was terrified. I kept very still in the bed, thinking maybe I had turned in my sleep, and that's why the bed was moving. And there was tapping. And the tapping continued. It went on for about 30 seconds to a minute after I was awake. And I was just trying to muster up enough courage to say, stop. And I finally said, please stop. And it did. Instantly. Meg from Arizona. So that's another story of a haunted bed. And I got to be honest, I can't think of anything more terrifying than a haunted bed, because to me, that's where you go for your refuge, right? That's where you go for your security. And to think that that could be haunted, yikes, terrifying, very scary stuff. Very scary stuff indeed. So when we started out this broadcast, we had a question for you. And the question was, what do you think of the Ouija board? Now, you've had a chance to hear Karen's opinion. I told Karen I think of it like a spiritual chainsaw. If you know what you're doing, it's okay. But if you don't, you could cause problems for yourself. I don't know if she liked that or not, but she's very nice and very kind and very polite when I said that. But I was just trying to be transparent and honest about my thoughts about it. I think somebody like Karen, she knows what she's doing. I'd be glad to be in the session with her. But if I'm starting off the session, I'd be a little afraid. So, question of the day, after hearing Karen's perspective, thinking about your own perspective, what do you think on the Ouija board? And Suzanne says, I'm scared of them because I'm just not sure we can actually fully control who or what comes through. Let's see. We need some more answers here. I'd like to get some answers after you've heard Karen speak. Maybe it's changed your mind. Maybe it's widened your perspective. So please put in the comments what it is. And that's why I love bringing on the experts. They really can broaden your perspective and maybe make you think about things you haven't before. Betty Davis, my dears, says, and I love that name. That's great. Used to be afraid. Now I want to try. There you go. Nancy says, I'm still terrified of the board, but should learn to work with it to rid fear. Sky-Eyed 42 says, I feel better about them. I like the idea that I'm talking to my higher self. We Have Fun says, we have a workshop full of boards, but no spooky activity. It all comes down to intention. Rob U. Wright says, you should do a live Ouija board session. It has occurred to me, but I'll have to continue to think on that. Sylvia says, I am excited to try speaking with my higher self through the board. There you have it. There you have it. Any other thoughts? We've got a couple more moments here. And would like your comments. Okay. Jake says, I've got two, but haven't really used them. Stranger Things board is fire. Set the cameras up right. Does the world need a campfire board? Ooh. Oh my. A spirit campfire board. Ooh, that's an interesting thought. Let's see. Anything else? Actually, Rob, you're right. In terms of my cameras, I'm going to add a second camera here. I have the camera. I've had it for a couple of years. I had one for a while. But I'll have a second one. Reach out, Jim. So will Jim be a will I be a coward or will I be a hero? Let's see. We will see. Well, everybody, I really appreciate it today. It's been a lot of fun. I've enjoyed it. I thank you for joining us on Jim Harold Live. I hope you'll join us next time. I'm having fun with this. I hope that you will subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's so important because by subscribing to the YouTube channel, you help build. It's kind of like a snowball, right? If you don't have a lot of subscribers, you don't have a lot of views, YouTube does not promote you. If you start getting more subscribers and more views, they start to kick in. The algorithm starts to kick in. And I know people say, well, YouTube doesn't like long form content and they want like 3-5 minute videos. And we want to do more of those too. We can only do one thing at a time. But one thing that will help for sure, I know, is if more people subscribe and more people watch. So if you subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss a show, that's going to help us a lot. And it's free and it's simple to use. So we would appreciate it. Let's see if we can get any last comments. We had fun, said we had fun again. Thanks for doing this every Friday. It's great. Make sure to hit that thumbs up before leaving, everyone. Thank you. Robbie Wright says, oh, I'm subscribed. Thank you. Suzanne says, thank you for doing this. Sylvia says, thanks, Jim. I look forward to this every week. Sandy says, great show, Jim. Thank you, Sandy. Thank you all. And we'll talk to you next time. And of course, stay safe and stay spooky. Bye-bye. Have a great day.